And now for international crime number 4, that is the international crime of genocide. This crime is set forth in the international treaty known as the Convention for the Prohibition and Prevention of Genocide. Genocide is one of the 4 separate crimes that Putin can be alleged to have committed. And the idea of genocide is that you're trying to destroy a particular group of people based on a characteristic that they possess. Now, only the things that are in the treaty are the categories of peoples who are qualified for a description of genocide if they're being attacked and trying to be destroyed by someone. We might remember the U.S. recognized the Armenian genocide not too long ago. We also recognized that genocide was taking place with the Yazidis in Iraq several years ago under ISIS, that constituted a genocide. The 4th crime that Putin has committed, that we can allege he's committed, is genocide. The word genocide comes from the Latin word gentis, which means a tribe or a nation of people, and side from kaidere, which is to kill. A homicide, suicide, genocide. The side suffix part of the word is to kill. So you're trying to kill a nation of people, a group of people, a particular people. And so genocide was not in the Second World War list of crimes that were committed by the Nazis, even though today we would call that a genocide. That developed after the Second World War, thanks to a lawyer named Raphael Lemkin, who coined that term genocide, aptly so. And it's been much applied to the Holocaust. But also we've had genocides occur in our lifetime. For example, Rwanda, where the Tutsis tried to destroy all of the Hutus. Or was it the other way around? I sometimes get that. One of the two was trying to destroy the other one completely. So we still have these instances, and we still have them going around in the world. We're looking at the Rohingya situation with Myanmar, and some people are calling that a genocide too. So these phenomena, these horrible, heinous phenomena, continue to occur. So for our purposes, the question is can Putin be accused of committing genocide or having committed genocide in his invasion of the Ukraine? The answer that for me is yes. I'm going to read what the definition of genocide is and what its subcomponents are, what kinds of acts constitute genocide, how you do genocide. But again, I just want to say that ironically, Russia accused the Ukraine of committing genocide against Russians or ethnic Russians in the Ukraine as an excuse to invade the Ukraine. So they said, we're coming into the Ukraine to stop the genocide by the Ukrainian government of ethnic Russians who are being destroyed in a genocide. Well, this was a bogus claim. There's been no evidence of any genocide of the Russian, ethnic Russian people in the Ukraine, nothing that would justify Putin invading the Ukraine. The government of Ukraine has taken Russia to the International Court of Justice and alleged that because they've been alleged to have committed genocide, that Russia, the court has jurisdiction to decide whether Russia is wrong in claiming they committed genocide and alleging that Russia is committing genocide. So that case is going on now on the issue of genocide or not, and how it was misused by the Russians as an excuse to enter into the Ukraine. Now, the Genocide Convention does require that if you see the genocide happening, you need to take action to stop it. Okay, so we'll notice that countries are very slow in claiming that something is a genocide, because once you claim that, once you say this is a genocide, then it puts a legal obligation on you under the convention, the Genocide Convention, to take action. And so the United States, more than any country, I think, is very slow in calling anything a genocide, because then everyone is going to be saying, okay, America, go in and stop it, go into this country, that country, and so on. And we're a little leery about going into new countries on these kind of let's save the people activities, especially where it involves the potential of a nuclear holocaust. So genocide. The crime of genocide can be found in three places, two of which are the same. The first one is the Convention on the Prohibition and Prevention of Genocide, which requires states to criminalize acts of genocide, and it defines what genocide is. Now, genocide is a word that's very much misused. Anytime we think of one ethnic group killing another ethnic group, we go genocide, genocide, or some people do, and it may or may not be correct to use that term. So we have to use terms correctly. In international law, things mean particular things and they don't mean something else. But a lot of people not understanding this language, not understanding what this is, as probably you yourself, will misuse terms like torture, like genocide, like war crimes, because we really don't know what they are, because our country has not taught us what they are as we should, as we heard in the beginning about teaching our people the basic principles of humanitarian law. So the crime of genocide is in a treaty between a whole lot of countries in this world, including the U.S. and Russia. We've signed and ratified the treaty. The U.S. ratified it, I think, in 1950 or 49. It was drafted and adopted in 1948 at the UN in the aftermath of the Holocaust. And the U.S. took 38 years to ratify it through the Senate. It was highly contested in the U.S. Because they thought the world was going to accuse us of committing genocide on the American Indians, Native Americans, I should say, and perhaps even African Americans. So it was a very contentious issue before the U.S. government finally ratified it in 1988. So Russia is bound by this treaty obligation. Also, it has become binding as a matter of customary international law, as we've defined earlier. On that basis, it is a separate international legal norm, and you would use the same content definition for as in the treaty. And then the second source that we will be reading is the Draft Code of Crimes Against the Peace and Security of Mankind. So we'll start with the first of those three bases. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention defines the international crime of genocide as follows. In the present convention, the Genocide Convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Now, as such is a fuzzy little word, but basically what it means is that group, you're trying to destroy that group because of its characteristic, its religion, because of its nationality, because of its ethnical makeup or racial makeup. So you need to intend to destroy in whole or in part that group of people because they have that characteristic and you don't like that characteristic and you want to get rid of them. So that's basically what's happened. Excuse me. The following acts are acts of genocide. A, killing members of the group. We've seen that in the Ukraine. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. We've seen that a lot. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Yes, we've seen that. Next, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, trying to stop the group from reproducing itself and having more of a certain religion, more of a certain racial group, more of a certain nationality, to try to stop the group from reproducing and stop that and destroy that line of people. The next one is forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So this happened, for example, I think in Australia with some of the Aborigines. They took the children away and put them in white foster homes to try to assimilate them into the culture and adulterate and eventually get rid of the Aboriginal culture and ethnic group as such, or a racial group, however you want to call that. But they're trying to eradicate those kinds of groups. There's these allegations in Canada, too, about the forced assimilation of the Native Canadians, Indigenous Canadians, trying to assimilate them forcibly into the culture, and whether that constitutes genocide. If you're trying to destroy the group, that's genocide. If you're just trying to discriminate against the group, that's discrimination. And the point at which it becomes genocide is too complicated for us to get into right now. But genocide, you're trying to destroy the group, okay, or destroy a part of the group, okay? So that's the definition of the Genocide Convention. Now, the Draft Code of Crimes Against the Peace and Security of Mankind defines genocide as follows. It's the exact same as the convention, the Genocide Convention, so I won't repeat it. All of those same elements, A to E, are in the Draft Code of Crimes Against the Peace and Security of Mankind. They just adopted that because that was the source, the legally binding, internationally accepted source of the definition of genocide. Now, some people are trying to expand the definition of genocide in terms of what kinds of people it covers. For example, should it cover LGBT people as a group? Should that be included in this? So they're trying to expand it, either expand the interpretation of these 5 categories or add new categories by amending the Genocide Convention. So that process is going on. But for the time being, only these categories that are mentioned in the treaty are covered. That's national, ethnical, racial, or religious. That's four different groups. Okay, so the next source of the norm for the international crime of genocide is the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, which we said is not binding upon Russia because they have not ratified the Rome Statute, but it will be used as a legal basis for the investigation of genocide by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, because the Ukraine has initiated an investigation of Russia for acts committed by Russia in the Ukraine. Even though Ukraine is not a member of the International Criminal Court, it has accepted the court's jurisdiction over actions that happen in the Ukraine. It did that in 1914. It did it again for this 2022 invasion. So the court in The Hague the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction to investigate what's going on in the Ukraine in this invasion, what Russia's been doing. That's happening now. Also, within the Ukraine itself, they're having war crimes investigations, and that will include considerations of whether that constituted genocide. With regards to the Ukraine and Russia and genocide, it's my opinion that it is Russia's intent to destroy what is known as the state, the country of the Ukraine, and to destroy the identity of Ukrainians as a people, as a self-identifying people who are Ukrainians, with their nationality, with their language, with their customs, traditions, and all of that, that Putin is trying to destroy that and assimilate them back into, in his opinion, the Russian sphere, the Russian world, the Russian Empire. So he's trying to re-Russianize what is the Ukraine. And so trying to destroy that ethnic identity of Russian, that's destroying a national group, not a religious group or an ethnical group, or a racial group. It's in my opinion, it's a national group. Okay, I hope I didn't say that wrong, but in my opinion, what Putin is trying to doing is to destroy a national group in violation of the Genocide Convention by most of those A to E, 1 to 6 different predicate acts, killing members, imposing conditions on member calculated to bring their destruction. So, for example, cutting them off from source of wheat, cutting them off from food sources, from supplies of gas, from access to hospitals. All of these things are conditions that are imposed on them by the Russians' conflict that are going to kill them slowly, one at a time, slowly, and that Putin would like to have happen with all of the Ukrainians, or at least have them all capitulate and recognize that they're really Russians in the eyes of Putin. So I think that Putin has committed genocide. That's my opinion. And Putin, I so accuse you of committing genocide, having committed it, because you intended to do this and you started to do it. You announced that Ukraine was just a fiction made up by some other countries and that it's really part of Russia. And so I believe that you have yourself spoken the words that indicate your intent to destroy what is the country and the state of the Ukraine and its people as Ukrainians, as such. Okay, my 2 cents. The Rome Statute defines genocide as follows. And this is mostly exactly the same as is in the draft code and the convention itself. But I'll read it just one more time. Genocide for purposes of this statute, the International Criminal Court statute, means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such: killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. In my opinion, the forcing of 6 million Ukrainians to flee the Ukraine and leave the father of families and split the family, and mother and children go to other countries and separate the families, is a sort of preventing births from happening by separating the couples and not allowing them their procreation faculties. So in my opinion, I would interpret that as a factor in preventing births of Ukrainians by keeping those refugees out of the country, separating the husbands and wives, so there's no more Ukrainians being reproduced. Okay, I'm speaking seriously about that. It's very, very serious. When you deal with the very regeneration and multiplication and growth and development of a people's itself, this is super serious business. Okay, so we've defined genocide now. We know what it is now. And that is the 4th international crime that Putin has, in my opinion, committed, and for which he is a hostis humani generis, a enemy of the human race. Let me see my notes. Back to my notes. This is aimed at eliminating a group of people specifically because of a characteristic or identity of the members of that group, such as their racial, religion, or nationality. Okay. There are other public international... Okay, I'm finished with genocide. I've defined it, and I think you can see where it applies. And some reporters are starting to throw that word genocide inside, and some of the reports from Ukrainian sources will throw out, we think this is a genocide. most of those are understatements. They don't understand what the law is. But most of them are so deadly obvious to me that I think it's prima facie cases that we've seen visually and by reports we've read. Now, there are other public international violations of law under both treaty law and customary international law and general international law that are being committed by Putin and the Russian armed forces. So the 4 categories that I've read are not the only, and not even the only international criminal norms that can be found in either treaty or statute that Putin is violating. But I just wanted to give you the main ones, because those are the categories, if he didn't show up in front of an international tribunal, the main ones that would constitute the terms of reference of the judicial body that would prosecute him. Okay, whether that's the International Criminal Court, which is not very likely, but possible in the nature of things, and any other tribunal, such as a national tribunal, the Ukraine criminal courts, or perhaps France or Sweden. Could happen. We don't know. So there are other violations of international law that Putin has committed, and also he's committed not only crimes, international crimes, giving rise to individual criminal responsibility, but he's also committed a whole lot of human rights violations under international human rights law. Now, international human rights law imposes responsibility upon the state for actions of the state which violate the specific international human rights norms found in international human rights treaties, like the